What I was about to do would utterly humiliate my wife, Lisa, and her little plaything, Brandon. She needed to learn, once and for all, that I wasn't the kind of man who would tolerate betrayal. As we pulled up to my house, everything was set. The plan was in motion, and before the afternoon was over, both of them would regret ever crossing me. But before I get ahead of myself, let me take you back and explain how we got to this point. My name is Waylon James Carter. Lisa and I have been married for 20 years, and we're both 42. We've been together since we were kids, junior high sweethearts who never dated anyone else. I was the captain of the football team, and she was the head cheerleader. We were that couple, the golden pair. The kind everyone thought would be together forever. Right after high school, we tied the knot. We built our life in a mid-sized Texas town, smack in the middle of oil country. I got a job working as a roughneck for a drilling company, while Lisa became a stay-at-home mom. We had 2 kids early on, and honestly, she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever laid eyes on. Tall, about 5 feet 10 inches, with legs that could drive a man insane. I especially loved the way she wrapped them around me in bed. We started fooling around back in high school. Awkward at first, but we figured things out quickly. 2 kids came along within 3 years. After a rough second delivery, we decided we were done. I got a vasectomy to make sure we wouldn't have any surprises. And listen, I don't mean to brag, but I know what I'm doing in the bedroom. I've seen Lisa's eyes roll back in pleasure more times than I can count. Even after all these years, our chemistry never faded, which made it all the more confusing why she'd throw it all away. Once the kids hit junior high, Lisa decided she wanted more for herself. She enrolled in a local junior college and became a paralegal. Eventually, she landed a job at a law firm that specialized in oil and gas contracts. Around the same time, my own career took off. I started my own oil well site prep company. The competition in Texas was slim, and I made good money fast. Soon, we moved out of our old trailer and into a beautiful custom-built home in one of the nicest neighborhoods around. We were living well, and Lisa seemed to love her job. My business required me to travel, Texas, New Mexico, sometimes Louisiana. But I never worried about Lisa while I was gone. She worshipped the ground I walked on. Or so I thought. About 4 months ago, Lisa's firm hired a new attorney, Brandon Walsh, fresh out of law school. He was in his early 30s, sharp-looking, and married with 2 little kids. From the moment he started, Lisa couldn't stop talking about him. Brandon is so smart. Brandon is so talented. Brandon this, Brandon that. I met the guy at the firm's Christmas party last month. He struck me as one of those polished types who thought he was better than everyone else. He looked at me like I was some dumb oilfield worker, which was funny considering I could buy and sell him 10 times over. Lisa drank more than usual that night. She spent nearly the entire evening glued to his side, dancing with him more times than I cared to count. His wife didn't look thrilled either, but I let it go, chalked it up to Lisa being tipsy. Besides, when we got home, she tore my clothes off like a woman possessed. It was one of the most intense nights we'd had in a long time. Afterward, I asked her, half-jokingly, if she had a thing for the guy. She just laughed. Waylon, you're crazy. You're the only man I've ever had or will ever need. Besides, I know you'd never cheat on me, and I damn well know you wouldn't tolerate it from me either. Yeah, turns out she was a liar. A couple of weeks later, I was out of town working when I got a call from one of my guys at the shop. Waylon, this is Ray. I'm in the alley behind your house, and there's this fancy-looking BMW parked near your place. You didn't buy a BMW, did you? I frowned. Hell no, Ray. Have you ever seen me drive anything but a damn pickup? Didn't think so, he said. But this car, it looks like it's parked right near your house. If Lisa's got a girlfriend over, why would she have her park out back? It seems off. My gut twisted. What color is the car, Ray? It's red, boss. My mind flashed back to the Christmas party. I could swear Brandon had driven off in a red car that night. Ray, I said slowly, find a spot where you won't be seen. Watch the back door. If some guy comes out and gets into that car, call me back. Ray did exactly as I asked. He even used binoculars to get a clear view. About 45 minutes later, my phone rang again. Waylon, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but a young guy just walked out of your back door. Lisa was standing just inside. wearing nothing but her robe. And it's the middle of the afternoon. I gripped my phone so tight I thought I'd break it. If Lisa was screwing around on me with that little punk, she was about to regret the day she was born. And he? He wasn't going to be worth much when I was done with him either. Nobody fucks with Waylon Carter. I got back home the next day and drove straight to a spy shop in Midland. A buddy had told me about the place, and I was about to put it to good use. I picked up a hidden camera disguised as an alarm clock. It was motion-activated, perfect for catching any movement in the bedroom. I also bought software that let me tap into Lisa's phone calls. I didn't know how the hell it worked and I didn't care. I just needed to know the truth. That evening, I decided to test Lisa. I made a move on her. Not because I wanted to touch her, but because I wanted to see her reaction. She pulled away, muttering something about being tired. Yeah, that told me everything I needed to know. The smoking gun. The next morning, I told Lisa I had to leave town again for work. She put on a good show, acting all disappointed. But as soon as I walked out the door, she was on the phone with Brandon. Waylon's gone again, she said. Perfect, Brandon replied. I'll be over this afternoon. Same plan. I'll park in the alley. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but I forced myself to stay calm. If they were going to do this, I needed proof. I spent the night in a cheap motel, drowning in whiskey and rage. I wasn't just angry, I was hurt. The kind of hurt that sits in your chest like a boulder, making it hard to breathe. The next day, I went home while Lisa was at work. I checked the footage, and there it was. Lisa and Brandon. In our bed. It was over. But not before I got my revenge. I pulled up to my house, but I didn't park right in front. No, I wanted a bit of distance, a bit of room to let everything unfold the way I planned. As I stepped out of my truck, Ray and Logan followed, carrying the chairs, rope, and duct tape. I pulled out my phone and called Tank. All right, buddy, it's go time. While we headed inside, Tank had his own job to do. Using the massive forklift we brought along, he carefully lifted Brandon's shiny red BMW and made his way down the block. There was a gated community pool at the end of the street, and that gate? Just wide enough to fit his rig through. With a quick snip of his bolt cutters, the lock was gone. And just like that, Brandon's precious little car went for an unexpected swim. Meanwhile, we made our way upstairs. The second we reached my bedroom door, I could hear them. Grunts, moans, the rhythmic creak of my goddamn bed. I nudged the door open just enough to see inside, and there she was. Lisa, naked, straddling him, riding him like she had no care in the world. That was all I needed to see. I turned to Ray and Logan and gave them the signal. Our first priority? Brandon. He needed to be dealt with first. We kicked the door open with a crash. Lisa screamed, her eyes going wide in horror. Waylon. Oh God. No. Please, I can explain. I'm so sorry. Just don't hurt him. Ray and Logan didn't waste a second. They grabbed Brandon and wrestled him off the bed, ignoring his panicked yelps. He was weak. No real fight in him. They forced him into one of the chairs, tying him down tight and sealing his mouth shut with duct tape. Lisa was next. She fought harder, screaming and crying. But Logan held her down while Ray secured her to the other chair. I made sure they left her mouth uncovered. I wanted to hear what she had to say. As I stood there, I could tell the boys were sneaking glances at her. Not that I blamed them. Lisa was still beautiful, even after all these years. But I wasn't about to let myself think about that. She wasn't my wife anymore. Not after this. Once Brandon was secured, Ray and Logan carried him downstairs and strapped his chair to the headache rack in the back of my truck. Then, I sat down in front of Lisa. She was sobbing. Waylon, please. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It was just stupid. A mistake. Please, don't do this. I stared at her, feeling my chest tighten. Why, Lisa? Was I a bad husband? A bad lover? What did I do to deserve this? She shook her head frantically. No, Waylon. You're amazing. I swear. I love you more than anything. Brandon was just... I don't even know. It was nothing. Just a stupid little fling. It didn't mean anything. This was supposed to be the last time, I swear. I clenched my jaw. It might not have meant anything to you, Lisa, but it meant something to me. You destroyed everything we built. Everything we were. For what? A thrill? A goddamn itch you needed to scratch? She sobbed harder. I'll do anything. Please. Just forgive me. I never wanted to hurt you. I scoffed. You never wanted to hurt me? Well, congratulations, Lisa. You did. You ripped my heart out, and you did it in our own bed. She was still crying, still pleading, as I pulled the duct tape over her mouth. I nodded to Ray and Logan, and together, we carried her down to the truck. She was placed right next to Brandon, strapped in tight to the headache rack. I turned to look at him. He was shaking, eyes wide with terror. Good. I leaned in close. You're about to feel a little bit of the humiliation I feel right now, boy. Ever read The Scarlet Letter? No? Well, you're about to live it. I pulled out 2 handmade signs, one for each of them. Lisa's read, I cheated on my husband. Brandon's? I cheated on my wife. On both sides of my truck, I hung giant banners, bright red with bold white letters. Adulterers. Then, we hit the road. As I drove through town, I laid on the horn. People stopped and stared. Some laughed, some gasped in shock, and others shook their heads in disgust. Word spread fast. By the time we reached the law firm where Lisa and Brandon worked, a small crowd had already gathered. I parked right in front and kept honking. Before long, the senior partner stepped outside, his face twisted in confusion. I climbed out of the truck and strolled right up to him. Thought you'd like to see what your employees were up to during lunch today, I said. As if on cue, my lawyer's representative stepped forward, handing over my lawsuit against the firm. Another man walked over to Lisa, placing divorce papers in her lap. I untied one of her hands just long enough for her to accept them. The senior partner, now red-faced with anger, turned to Lisa and Brandon. You two are fired. Effective immediately. We left shortly after, heading straight for Brandon's house. His wife, Megan, opened the door, their 2 young kids peeking out from behind her. My heart ached for her. I hated to do this, but she deserved the truth. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, I said softly, handing her a flash drive. But you need to see this for yourself. She took it, her hands trembling. Then, she turned to her husband, tied up in my truck bed. Tears welled in her eyes before she marched over and slapped him so hard his head snapped to the side. She didn't say a word, just turned and walked back inside. Right before she shut the door, I added, by the way, you might want to check the community pool. I think Brandon's car rolled into it by accident. His eyes widened in horror. We left him sitting there, still strapped to the chair, as we drove away with Lisa still in the back. Our last stop? Her parents' house. They were already standing on the porch when I pulled up. I climbed out and gave them the full story, offering them the video proof. I need y'all to understand. I'm not playing games. Lisa did this to herself. Her father, Ron, shook his head. Waylon, I am so damn sorry. You've been a good husband to her. A damn good one. Is there any chance you could find it in your heart to forgive her? I exhaled, looking him dead in the eye. Ron, I've given her my all. And this is how she repays me? I can't come back from that. Her mother, Joanne, sighed. We understand, son. And we don't blame you one bit. I untied Lisa and led her up to the porch. As I pulled the tape from her mouth, she immediately started begging. Waylon, please. I was stupid. It wasn't worth it. I swear. No one will ever be as good as you. Just give me one more chance. For a split second, I almost considered it. She looked so small, so desperate. But then I remembered. You don't mess with Waylon Carter. Sorry, Lisa. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. And with that, I left her with her parents. Lisa didn't fight the divorce. I kept the house and my business. She moved in with her folks. I dropped the lawsuit against the law firm. I'd made my point. A year later, though, something strange happened. I started to miss her. And then, I got a call from Joanne. Waylon, honey, can we meet for lunch? I think we need to talk. I agreed to meet Joanne for lunch because, deep down, I wanted to know how Lisa was doing. It had been a long time since I had even spoken to her, and when I did, all she ever wanted to do was apologize. Over lunch, Joanne filled me in. Lisa was still living with them. She had found a new job working for a couple of older attorneys in a nearby town. 2 men who needed a sharp legal assistant to keep their office running. She liked the work, and according to Joanne, she was doing well. But what really caught my attention was what Joanne said next. Waylon, she hasn't gone on a single date since you left. Plenty of men have asked her out, but she refuses every time. She's still holding on to hope that one day, you might want her back. I let that sink in for a moment. Then, I admitted something I hadn't even said out loud to myself yet. I miss her, Joanne, and I've forgiven her. It had taken me a long time, longer than I ever thought it would, but I had finally come to terms with what happened. The anger had burned itself out. Joanne smiled softly. Waylon, I'm not asking for promises, but if you could just talk to her. Let her say what she's been wanting to say for the past year. I think it would mean the world to her. I nodded. All right, Joanne. I think I can finally sit down and hear her out. That afternoon, I called Lisa. We made plans to meet that evening at a little bar we used to go to back when things were good. She sounded excited, maybe even nervous. A couple of hours later, Joanne called me again just to thank me. She said Lisa was overwhelmed with happiness, just knowing I was willing to see her again. I didn't know what I was expecting, but when Lisa walked through the door of that bar, I had to do a double take. She looked stunning. She had lost some weight, and her hair was long again, just like it had been back in high school. Dressed up in a way that made every man in the bar turn and take notice, she reminded me of the girl I fell in love with all those years ago. I stood up and walked toward her. Lisa, damn, you look beautiful. It's good to see you. I pulled her in for a hug, and she clung to me longer than I expected, her arms wrapped tightly around my neck. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were glossy with tears. Waylon, it's really nice to see you too. You look good. We sat down and made small talk at first. How work was going, how the kids were doing. Then, after a few minutes, Lisa took a deep breath, steadying herself. Waylon, I've spent the past year trying to figure out why I did what I did. And the truth is, I don't have any excuses. I've taken full responsibility for my actions. You don't know how many nights I cried myself to sleep, thinking about the pain and humiliation I put you through. I destroyed our family, and I lost the man I loved most in this world. Her voice broke, and she pulled a tissue from her purse to wipe her eyes. I had no feelings for Brandon. He was just a smooth talker who knew exactly what to say. Looking back, I see now that he manipulated me in ways I'll never fully understand. She sniffled, trying to pull herself together. But none of that matters. What matters is that I love you, Waylon. I always have. And I would give anything, to turn back the clock. She hesitated, then added softly, the kids were angry at me at first, and I don't blame them. But in time, they saw how much I regretted everything, and they forgave me. And now, I guess what I need most is to hear that you can forgive me too. Even if that means letting you go. I exhaled, staring down at the beer bottle in my hands. Lisa, I was humiliated. I was hurt in ways I can't even describe. Watching that video, seeing you with another man in our own bed, that was something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. She flinched, her eyes filling with fresh tears. And yeah, I was angry. That's why I punished you and Brandon the way I did. Maybe it was over the top. Hell, it probably was. But I wanted you both to feel even a fraction of what I felt. I took another sip of my beer, gathering my thoughts. But in time, I came to grips with everything. And I realized something important. I reached out and took her hand in mine. I forgive you, Lisa. She let out a shaky breath, squeezing my hand tightly. But, I continued, I can't trust you. No matter how much I want to. I just can't. I still see you with him in my nightmares. And that's something I'll never be able to erase. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, already knowing what I was about to say next. I love you, Lisa. I always will. But if we're meant to be together, it'll have to be in another lifetime. One where you never broke my heart. Tears welled up in my own eyes as I stood from the table. She reached for me, whispering, Waylon, please. But I just shook my head. I walked toward the door, and right before I stepped outside, I turned back one last time. She was still sitting there, her face wet with tears, looking at me like she wanted to stop me but knew she couldn't. I lifted my hand and gave her a small wave. A final goodbye. Then, I walked out. The pain in my chest was unbearable, like someone had driven a knife straight through my heart. But I had to do this. Because if Lisa learned one thing from all of this, I hope it was this. You don't mess with Waylon Carter. Dear listener, if you've made it this far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot.